right, everybody. Well, let's go ahead and get started. This is Kelly and Deb from Jeeps, obviously, and this is the 2018-2019 Chapter Leader Orientation. Just a couple of housekeeping things that Deb already talked about. Please mute your computer or your phone in order to prevent feedback. And then when questions arrive, when you have questions, use the chat function, and we'll also be breaking every now and then to find out if you have questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. So let's take a look at our agenda for today. We should finish in under an hour, leaving time for questions at the end as well. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about Jeeps' mission and vision, Jeeps' organizational structure at both the international and the chapter level. We're going to look at governance and operations, programming, chapter leader resources, a website overview, recognitions, and then finally some questions at the end. So let's just keep on going. So let's talk about Jeeps' mission. This is why we exist and who we are today. So Jeeps' mission statement is an international professional society dedicated to providing its members with forums to generate leadership, innovation, and excellence in grain-related industry operations. This is what Jeeps does, essentially, and why Jeeps began. And a fun little tidbit for you guys is, if you don't know this already, Jeeps International actually started as a chapter just like all of you. Regarding Jeeps' mission, as a professional organization, all of our memberships are with the individual, which I believe most of you on the call know, but it's always a good reminder. The memberships are not with the company. So for example, Cargill does not have a membership with Jeeps. The employees of Cargill do. Jeeps' mission also has not changed over the years, but the forums have. There are more opportunities for people to connect today than ever before, and some examples of that are the distance education program, including the hands-on training program that Deb will discuss a little bit more later, social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We have a new website. We also have regional chapter events. Two of the most common regional chapter events are the Great Lakes Regional Conference, which is held in April every year, and the North Central Regional Conference, which will be held in August of 2019. The North Central Regional Conference is not a yearly conference that's held. The next one will be held, though, in August of next year. And Deb, we will talk about that a little bit later. The other forums are, a lot of our chapters are now doing joint meetings and events. So that's another great way that our forums have changed. So let's now talk about Jeeps' vision. This is who we aspire to be and where we are going, our future direction, in other words. So we are the knowledge resource for the world of grain handling and processing industry operations. And you'll notice that the word "the" is capitalized because our vision is to be the first place professionals think of when they are looking for answers. And our members are a huge part of the knowledge resource, which is all of you guys. Jeeps is also a dynamic organization. Some of the examples, which I already talked about, are the distance education program with the development of the HOT program, the website, which now features the member directory as well as an online buyer's guide, and also handles event registration for chapters. It is continually growing to meet members' needs. And lastly, something you may not know is that Jeeps International and chapters share the same mission and vision. So I guess I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions about our mission and vision.
And I'm not seeing anything come up in the chat, so I think, and no one's raising their hand. So
we'll just keep right on moving. I'm going to kick it over to Deb here now, and she's going to talk a little bit about Jeeps' organizational structure.
So Jeeps' organizational structure is, like many associations, what all associations should be, based on membership. We are governed and serve our members at the same time. And that is it's a member-based organization. As what we do is determined and for our members. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Now, to get things done, we have kind of two blocks of how we operate. One is the international. So that's Kelly and I are staff of the international, and we are governed, so to speak, by the international board of directors, who represents people from all over the country and members from all over the country, and they determine the strategic goals of the organization. So they say, we want a professional development program that gives credentials in grain operations. They're the ones who determine that. The executive committee is the one who determines how we do it. What are the policies in place for this? How do we fund it? So they deliver. The international side provides the big international structure as far as the vision and strategy, where we go. Now, on the other side of the chapters, they're the heart and soul of the organization. So you saw that vision of being the knowledge resource. So the knowledge resource can be in the international side, developing professional development things, but it's also on the chapter side. So as chapters, you have chapter members, you have a chapter board and president, and you also fulfill the mission. You do it in a different way, and you probably do it in a much more hands-on way with the current members. You are the face, the voice of Jeeps for a lot of people, which is why we do this, to be honest, is because we want to make sure that we're able to answer your questions, we're able to give you the tools you need to be able to answer that, and then as you come together and as we talk to you or as we work with committees and task forces, you can share that information with the board. So we'll talk a little bit about the committees and task forces, but we also have functions that allow chapters and chapter leaders to say, hey, this is going on. We want to bring your attention to this. So it is a mutually beneficial arrangement. International would not be as strong without chapters, and I think chapters would not be as strong without someone from international say, okay, this is providing support. But I'll be honest, I tend to think the chapters are the heart and soul and the biggest identifier for most members and non-members.
Okay, thanks for that, Deb. Any questions on that? I know this slide might be a little bit, it's the best way for us to put on paper the organizational structure of Jeeps chapters versus international. So if there's no questions right now, we're going to move on to the committees and councils and task forces that Deb referred to. So with these committees that you see here, the International Executive Committee decides if these committees are necessary, while the International Board of Directors decides on what they do and their purpose. So again, the ties between committees and councils to the International Board. So if we look at the first one here, Continuing Education Programming Oversight Committee, also known as the CPOC. For new leaders on this call and potentially new members to Jeeps, in the Jeeps world, you're going to learn that we live off acronyms. So the CPOC is essentially responsible for course development for our distance education program with Kansas State. We then have the Exchange Host Advisory Council, known as the HAC, and they aid in exchange planning with local members and their spouses in the area. So for instance, for 2019, we'll be in New Orleans, so a lot of the HAC members are part of the Gulf South chapter and their spouses, and they are working with our exchange team to come up with the best programming and tours, events, stuff like that to promote while we're down in New Orleans. Thirdly, you'll see the Exchange Educational Programming Committee, also known as the EPC, and they are responsible for all the exchange education, all the pods, the sessions, the opening workshop, the closing workshop. The EPC handles all of that. Then we have the Marketing Oversight Committee, also known as the MOC, and they give direction with priority objectives that are set by the board. And then there's also the Membership Committee, which is solely responsible for recruitment, retention, and engagement. So now let's move on to the committee and council that are most relative to you guys as chapter leaders. And that is the Chapter Leader Advisory Support and Information Council. It's kind of a mouthful, so we kindly have nicknamed it the Classic. And then we also have the Chapter Resource Committee. But let's talk about the Classic first. So the Classic has quite a few different functions. Some of the main ones are, provides a forum for new ideas. So the Classic is made up of one representative from each chapter. If no one designates who they want that representative to be, by default, it's the president. So when we have these meetings, this is a chance for a chapter representative from each chapter to sit around, big round table and discuss new ideas. The Classic is also a resource to the International Board of Directors. As Deb talked about earlier, when we discussed the structure of JEEPS, chapters are the heart and soul of JEEPS, and this is your connection to the International Board through the Classic. And another main purpose is for the Classic to collaborate with other chapters. So this is where chapters can get together and, hey, what have been your successes? What have been your failures? What have you tried? What have you haven't tried? And to get real collaboration amongst the chapters. So moving along to the CRC, which is the Chapter Resource Committee. The Chapter Resource Committee exists as peer support, program development for our chapter services network, and leadership. Any questions on those committees right now? Okay. Well, let's keep moving right along. You guys are awesome. Let's get into a little bit of chapter governance. What is governance? So essentially, governance is leadership, right? So how can chapter boards lead? You can be a leader in many ways. And a few specific examples are you can lead by recruiting new leaders to your chapter, identifying leader prospects, having productive and strategic conversations and meetings, and making good decisions, which this leads us right into the process of making decisions and the basic board duties or job descriptions. So if we take a look at what boards do and the board of directors, one thing before I kick it over to Deb that I just want to point out is that all boards operate differently. There's not a one-size-fits-all type of governance, and it depends on the needs and personality of each individual chapter. Remember, you guys are autonomous. So now I'm going to kick it back over to Deb, and she's going to give us a rundown of boards and how to better understand them.
So the board sets the strategic direction of what, in every organization, no matter whether it is Rotary, JCs, or G. They set the strategic directions for where you're going to go this next year. And that sounds very scary. And at International, there's a whole bunch of strategic priority initiatives, and there's a big discussion about where we want to go long term. And honestly, chapters probably won't be doing that. They won't do like, okay, in the next 5 years, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be, your chapter leaders are going to sit down and say, what do we want to accomplish in the next year? We want to have a golf tournament. We want to have 3 meetings. What subjects do you think are most pertinent in our area? That's what we mean by strategic direction. It is kind of a plan for when you talk to people, this is what we're doing this year. Now, you can also incorporate some other things in that strategic direction. For instance, how to get more regular members involved participating. So you might say, okay, we have 3 meetings. How do we get more regular members involved? What do we do to improve our meetings? Those are discussions to have. What do we need to do to promote our meetings better? So those are all strategic directions. You may not take all of them on board. You may take some. But that's what you as a board should be doing as you start the year or as you go through the year. You also want to make sure you ensure necessary resources. So obviously, if you're going to have a golf tournament, you have to figure out how much do we charge for this golf tournament. You need to figure out, do we have the cash flow to be able to put on this event? Or how do we make sure that everything cash flows correctly? You also, it's not just money resources that you have to pay attention to, it's also volunteers. So I know in a lot of chapters, it feels like everything falls to the chapter board. But there is nothing that says, hey, if we have a big event coming, we can engage other chapter members in different ways. Some chapters have been known to talk to the companies in their area and say, the company each company organizes a meeting as far as getting a speaker in, that sort of thing. If you have a big event, like a trade show, there's nothing that says, you know what, maybe we just want to have a trade show chair who is not part of the board but is managing that piece of it. It is a great way to get people involved on a kind of a smaller scale, so they're not going to every board meeting, but they're also involved in doing the task. The other thing to ensure resources is leadership session. Getting people involved, and this is where you get a twofer. Maybe getting people involved on smaller projects, you can see they can get comfortable as a leader in your organization, but then you can also see how they operate and see if they'd be a good fit. It's thinking about recruiting. It's thinking about the future. No one wants to sit on a board very few people want to sit on a board forever. So recruiting is one of those things that has to start more than a week before the nominations are due. So recruiting is making people feel welcome, asking them what they like to do, making them feel part of the association. So that's part of the resources. Now, also as a chapter, you provide oversight. So you oversee finances. You would minimize the risk, you minimize exposure to risk. Most common one is discussion about open bars and liability associated with that. Any other liabilities that you might have in a situation. So let's say you want to have an open bar. What if you say, okay, we're going to limit it to 2 drink tickets? So you minimize your liability. Think about the size of the event. Now, we do have liability insurance that we'll talk about momentarily, but it doesn't cover, it does not cover the liability if something goes wrong, okay? So as a board, if you are planning a big event, really think about how do we make sure that we protect ourselves. Don't have not have a free-for-all. And I think you all probably intuit like what that means, because you all work in areas where you have to be conscious of safety. Then you also have fiduciary responsibilities. Now, this is something that GEEPS has not made up. This is every board member is responsible in these 3 areas: duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. So all 3 of these are this is true of every board. This is what is a legal responsibility. Now, what does that mean? Duty of care requires directors to fully inform themselves and deliberate carefully before making corporate decisions. So it's kind of the way you want to operate is, are you prepared for the meeting? Do you have an agenda? Do you know what's on the agenda? Are you is your head in the game, actively trying to get the information you need to make informed decisions and act as a steward of the association? So it's that whole bringing your best self to GEEPS. Next is duty of loyalty. So be loyal to the organization and don't use the information for personal gain. It is, don't say, oh, I've heard this going on. What I hear at GEEPS, I use for other, for my own personal benefit. The duty of loyalty requires directors to put the GEEPS interests above their personal interests in evaluating opportunities. That's a lot of judgment calls, and it involves you all being adults, but that is one of the things. Now, GEEPS International has a conflict of interest policy that we have. An example on a chapter level of conflict of interest would be Joe wants to donate to XYZ program, but he also happens to run the program. There's just some things to watch out for there. Let's put it that way. And then duty of obedience. So that means you're faithful to GEEPS mission. And you think about, does this work fit within our mission? Now, the one I like to do is if you want to organize a knitting class for GEEPS, I think that's in your chapter. That, while could be a very relaxing thing to do, may not fit with being the knowledge resource of GEEPS. you could stretch it maybe and say it's networking, but you see what I mean. If your education is going to be a knitting class, that won't work. So I want to take a sec, take a breath, and see if anyone has any questions on that and any of that. Okay.
Look at you guys. Okay, well, let's just keep moving right along. So, Deb, thank you for that. We've talked a lot about a chapter's board of directors. Now we're going to take a look at the specific individual roles, and keep in mind that these roles may be different in your chapter, but the following are some common divisions of duties. And hopefully you've all received my email welcoming you to chapter leadership and providing your basic duties as a leader. It's the end of September, so I guess that would have happened earlier in the spring when election results came in. So let's just kind of breeze through these real quick. So let's take a look at the chapter president. The president is responsible for preparing board meeting agendas, presides at meetings, appoints committees and task forces like what Deb was referring to. If you've got a big event and you need more members of your chapter to help out other than just the officers and directors. The president is also responsible for controlling the room, getting other members to engage, managing any conflict, things like that. And the president acts as the chapter spokesperson. Moving right along to the vice president. Vice president, now keep in mind that with chapter leadership within chapter boards, the vice president, this is where you find the most variation in job duties, responsibilities, because it's really up to the chapter. So, but some of the most common ones are fulfills president's duties if the president is not available, plays a major role with meeting planning and chairs programming committees, works with the secretary on program communications and promotion, and this position can be used as training for the president's position. It's not a mandatory, it doesn't have to be, but it can be used. So moving on to secretary. The secretary manages chapter communication and marketing. You can use the online member database for that, and we can talk about that a little bit later. If you are a secretary of your chapter and you're not hooked up to the database yet to be able to send out emails and things like that, let's make sure you get connected with Deb before the webinar is over. The secretary is also responsible for maintaining membership roles. So the secretary receives chapter roster that's sent monthly from Jeeps International, as well as an email indicating when a new Jeeps member has joined your chapter. And lastly, international reporting. Lucky for the secretaries, the majority of the reporting falls on them. So meeting reports, meeting schedules, and election results. And we're going to talk about these more in depth here in a little bit. Then we have the treasurer. The treasurer serves as the bank contact and has bank statements mailed to him or her, or hopefully online access nowadays. The treasurer receives funds and disperses them, keeps records of all receipts, deposits, and disbursements, balances the checkbook monthly, completes Jeeps financial reports, and delivers a treasurer's report at the annual meeting. So those are some basic job duties. Now, seeing that nobody has any questions, I'll just pause quick to see that nothing's coming up. We'll just keep on going. You guys are great.
Actually, I have a question.
Yes. Who is this?
This is Lonnie from Great Plains, chapter president.
Hi, Lonnie. Yeah.
I know we can download the documents that show their responsibilities, but will we have access to this PowerPoint just to kind of I hate to say it, but dumb it down for them, just to filter it a little bit more so they see the big picture?
Yes.
And I think all ours are really good. I just would like to kind of run it by them. All our officers are really good, but I'd like to run it by them. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So this is being recorded, and I'll have to do a little bit of editing after this, but then there will be a link sent out to everybody with this, so you will have access.
And just to let everybody know, you should have all received the Chapter Leaders Guide. If you're a veteran member, you should have received it last year, and then this year we've been sending out the new leaders should get the Chapter Leaders Guide. So that's also a really good reference. If you don't have it, let us know. We're happy to send some more out to you.
Yes, absolutely. You can email either one of us, and we can get some out to you. Okay, any other questions real quick before we continue? Okay, so let's talk about chapter operations. And when we talk about chapter operations, I'm referring to the day-to-day details, including governmental compliance. So this is some of these things here. You can see on this slide the chapter license and affiliation agreement. The chapter license and affiliation agreement, you may say, what is this? Especially if you're new to Jeeps leadership. This is the written contract between your chapters and Jeeps International that formalizes the relationship between Jeeps and its chapters. So this lets you know, this sets the expectations of chapters. This is what you need to do to comply with this agreement, and Jeeps International, this is what we need to do to comply with this agreement. So some of the things that, oh, hold on, sorry, I got ahead of myself there. So some of the things it addresses in the chapter license and affiliation agreement is how chapters can use the Jeeps name and the Jeeps logo. Talks about chapter disbandment and termination, which we don't want to have that discussion. We want all of our chapters going good and strong. And like I said, it makes clear the expectation and requirements of chapters as well as the obligation of Jeeps to its chapters. So, and the other bullet point there, chapters are businesses. You are legal entities. You're legit. You all have federal identification numbers. You have registered agents. You're the real deal. So always keep that in mind with chapter operations. So let's, continuing on our conversation about the chapter license and affiliation agreement, let's talk about some of these requirements that are talked about in there. So here you'll see the main 4 requirements, which are meeting reports, elections, meeting schedules, and financials. So meeting reports are due by June 30th every year. And what that is you are required to submit at least 3 meeting reports. So as you hold your meetings between July 1st and June 30th every year, there's a meeting report to be submitted. Now, Jeeps has some automation that we have created, and so now every week on a Thursday, chapter secretaries will get an email saying, if you've had a meeting that week, saying, hey, you had a meeting, hope it went well, here's a little reminder to go ahead and get on the website and submit your meeting report, which I know has helped a lot of chapter secretaries, because then at the end of the year, I'm not hounding them saying, hey, I need all your meeting reports. In regards to meeting reports, you might wonder why we ask for these reports, and that is to promote your chapter's work and generate ideas amongst our chapters. So there's in the Ingrain, which is now an every other month publication, there's chapter news where we highlight chapter meetings, what they've done. If people submit pictures, we like to put pictures in there. So it's all about being able to promote your chapter and what it's doing. Okay, let's move on to elections. All election results are due by June 1st each year. And again, I'm going to start with, you might ask, why? Why do you want this information? That's because we need to know who your leaders are and ensure that each chapter's elections are held in accordance with their bylaws. Now, we're going to follow up with bylaws here in a little bit. And then obviously we need to know, Deb and I need to know who we're going to be communicating with over the year. You know, who do we need to lend a hand to? Who do we need to educate? Stuff like that. Moving on to the 3rd requirement, meeting schedules. Meeting schedules are due by September 1st each year. And this is where you literally give us a list of, you know, what you've planned for the year from July 1st. Just as a reminder for everybody, Jeeps fiscal year is July 1 to June 30. So when I talk about, you know, your meeting schedules for the year, I'm talking about meetings held between July 1st and June 30th, not January to December. And again, why do we ask for this information? To promote your meetings. They're promoted in Ingrain, and then once a month we have the local focus email, which is sent out and provides a list of the next 3 months chapter events for everybody. So that's why we promote that, and as we'll look at our website, with the upgrade of our website last year, there's just lots of fun ways to be able to promote you and make your events known and fun on the website. And lastly, financial reports. These are due by August 1st each year. Again, Why, you might wonder, do we need this information? Well, that's because as a chapter, you are your own entity, and Jeeps International has a legal obligation to file your chapter's tax return each year. That is actually something that I do. So in order for me to be able to do that every year by November 15th, I need your financial report to do that. So that is the other requirement. So let's move on. Well, I guess I don't see anybody on the phone have a question regarding any of the chapter requirements, reporting requirements, I should say. Okay, so let's keep going talking about your chapter as a business. A couple key points here. One thing to always remember, your chapter is a not-for-profit corporation. In Canada, they're considered societies. So each chapter has their own articles of incorporation that are registered with each state. And you also have a registered address, and that is provided by a third-party service. So what this third party does is they provide a legal address only for corporate legal purposes. So for when I file your tax returns and when I file your chapter's annual reports. This is not, we don't use the address of a leader because leaders change. So we've got a third party. So for example, if you needed, I just had to request, somebody needed a W-9 for their chapter. On that W-9, we would put the chapter's legal address, which is that registered agent address. Moving on to your chapter's tax exempt. So this means that you are exempt from federal income tax, and that is pretty much it. So chapters qualify under as a 501c6 corporation, which is business leagues and chambers of commerce. You are not a charity. So you are not a 501c3 charity. That's very important to remember. You are not exempt from sales tax. You are only exempt from federal income tax. As a chapter, you cannot accept tax-deductible donations. Again, you are not a charity. And lastly, tax returns, which, as I've said, we take care of these for you, and we need your financial report to do so. Now, the tax returns for chapters is a fairly easy report since chapters, for the most part, are dealing with small amounts of money and you don't have paid staff. However, there is an income threshold. So that is why we need your financial reports, because if you go above the income threshold, it just means that I need to fill out a different, more exhaustive report. And that income threshold is $50,000. So that would be at the end of the year if your net is over $50,000, then I cannot just file the 990E postcard for your chapter. I have to file a more exhaustive report. Seeing no questions and hearing nothing, I'm going to keep going.
Actually, I have another question. This is Lonnie again.
Yep.
When we collect $20 for a meeting to pay for dinner, should we be collecting sales tax on that?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, what that means is that you as a chapter, so let's say you rent out, you go rent out Chuck E. Cheese, okay? Sorry, my brain isn't working very well. You go rent out Chuck E. Cheese, they send you an invoice and they have sales tax on their invoice. You have to pay that sales tax to them. Does that make sense?
You must know our chapter.
But does that make sense? It's not, you don't need to collect tax between the members and the people that are coming to your meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, Chuck E. Cheese was a bad example, but you know. Okay, so let's go back to, let's talk about a couple things here about your chapter being a business. We'll get into bylaws, which is something I brought up a couple of slides ago. So just to define bylaws, they're essentially the rules that the chapter lives by. They're legal documents that set forth the structure of the board and the organization. In other words, I like to think of it as the operating manual for chapters. And each chapter's bylaws are different. The bylaws define the size of the board and how it will function, defines roles and responsibilities of directors and officers, which is included in the, when we went over a few slides ago all the different positions and their responsibilities. The bylaws also indicate rules for holding meetings, electing directors, etc. Essentially, it explains the processes behind making any governance change within the chapter. So an example of that, if you wanted to change your bylaws, there's a very specific process that needs to be followed, and you would learn about that process in your bylaws. Now, side note, if you get to a point in your chapter where you want to look at changing your bylaws, please contact Deb and myself right away, because we'll walk you through this. It's kind of a big process. We don't change bylaws willy-nilly type of a thing. So, and I'm not going to get into a lot of conversation about it now. If people are interested in that or want more information, let's talk offline. I'm hoping none of you are currently in a spot where you are thinking about changing your bylaws. A final note, chapters have bylaws just as Jeeps International has bylaws. Our Jeeps International discusses chapters, but mostly in the formation and termination of chapters. Then you guys, as your separate entities, have your own bylaws. So now, if you remember earlier, we talked about managing risk and limiting liability at chapter events. Deb brought that up. So here's where insurance comes in. So Jeeps provides directors and officers liability insurance to all of our chapter boards. What this does is this protects chapter leaders acting in their role. So chapter leaders are making decisions about how to run the chapter and how to spend money, for example. This liability insurance provides you leaders protection against claims of chapter mismanagement. If somebody wanted to sue you because they thought that you were spending money the wrong way or in the wrong spot, this is where this insurance protects you guys as leaders serving your chapter. It also serves as a legal defense fund should your chapter be sued. While claims are very rare, it is still a best practice to carry this insurance, and that's why we offer it. Jeeps International offers it to chapters. Now, in the time that Deb and I have been here, and in fact, the entire time I believe we've had chapter operations with Jeeps, there has never been a case of anybody being sued or needing to use this, but just important for you guys to know. And a reminder, just like Deb talked about, this insurance does not provide general liability protection. This does not protect from injury or damages. So once again, it's not general liability insurance. Any questions before I kick it back to Deb?
Okay, everybody, I want to do a quick roll call because I think I know who most of the people on here who are on the call, but I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. So I want to read through. If you don't hear your name, chime in at the end, and we'll see if we can make sure that we mark you off so you guys get credit for being here. Lonnie Glenn from Great Plains, Kevin Danner from Greater Iowa, Josh McClure and Justin Skamehorn from Greater Nebraska, Brian Greenager, from Mid-America, Lyle Chalk from Minneapolis, Andrew Merkins, Minneapolis, Carolyn Smith, Minneapolis, and James Drown, Siouxland. Are there any other people on this call?
Yes.
And
Dan Vandenhouten. Oh.
Okay. Hi, Dan. Anybody
Dan
else?
from Twin Ports.
Twin Ports. Okay. Anyone else on the call? All right. Well, Dan, you get extra points now.
Sweet.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the fun part of chapter governance, the chapter programming. It's what's all. It really is what the heart and soul of everything we do. It's what it's all about. It provides the value to members. It provides value to employers. There's educational program, CEUs. It's fun. And this is the primary way chapters achieve the vision and mission of Jeep. On an international level, we talk a lot about quality programming and raising the bar to ensure quality education, but it really is up to, for many of our members, it's the chapters that provide the education that they get. And it comes in different ways. So you plan a meeting and you have a speaker come in to talk about safety. It's a pretty much straight up finding those speakers, doing the education program. We are in the process of developing the Speakers Bureau, which will help you find speakers. But sometimes you can't get a speaker or someone cancels at the last minute. There's also programs in a box. That's another way of utilizing the chapter meetings. We had an article in the last Ingrain about how Greater Nebraska utilizes that programs in a box. That is a very valid way of kind of encouraging education programming. One thing I don't want you to forget is that the networking is really important too. That's also a function of education. I'm sure you have all been at meetings at some point where you're talking to someone and you're just kind of talking through and you say, oh, this is happening, and someone says, oh, this happened to me. That networking piece of Jeeps is invaluable, and our members as educational resources is invaluable. So what you as a chapter are charged with is to find the different ways of completing the mission of Jeeps, which is being the knowledge resource. And it can be educational program, it can be networking program, and anything in between. And it can be fun. So to do that, we have some resources to help you. We have we have a toolbox to give you some ideas to help you navigate this. So we have the Chapter Leaders Advisory Support and Information Council, otherwise known as CLASSIC. And we have the CRC. These are places where you can engage with Jeeps and share ideas with each other and also with Jeeps International. Now, we also have our website. And when we redesigned our website a couple years ago, having resources for chapters was one of the priorities. And Kelly has flipped the power of the PowerPoint to me. So I will show you some of these. We have number one, the Chapter Resource Center. And this is kind of the place where you can find this webinar when we post it. But also, this is where you can go to find your reporting forms that Kelly talked about. We have them all right here. You don't have to try and save them. I will note that 3 of the 4 forms are right on the web, and you just enter the information, that gets sent to us. The financial reporting form is an Excel sheet, and if your treasurer wants help on figuring that out, Kelly or I would be more than happy to work it through. But you can use that financial report form as kind of your general ledger, and if you just put all your payments and money received, you could almost do the financial statement at the end of the year. It'll be done. It'll be a piece of cake. We also have the recorded webinars functionality. I want to skip back because we know what we're doing, what that is. The operation and governance. So this is a place, like Lonnie, if you wanted officer and director job descriptions, you can go here. The Chapter Leaders Guide, if you want the electronic version of it. Some sample bylaws. So this is kind of a place where, if you have a question, maybe I would say this would be the first place to go. Is say, okay, do you have something that kind of covers this? Next is the meeting planning materials. And this is where the programs in a box live. So if you are thinking about doing a program in a box, you can see what's available to you. So there's a link and the full list of webinars that you can go to. So these are the Grain Journal we do in conjunction with Grain Journal for our members. And so this is a way for you to kind of keep that education going. We also want to encourage you to recognize your members in a number of ways. So in a few weeks, you will get this email from me saying, hey, we hear you have these members who have been a member for 5 years or 10 years, 15 or 20. You can recognize that by ordering some pins. At 25, 40, and 50, Jeeps gives the pins, but leading up to it, it can be done at a chapter meeting. There's also the chapter member of distinction form. That is due the end of December. If you have some chapter member who's done something great in your organization, or has just always been there and kind of that backstop, this is a way to recognize them. You can complete the form, and Jeeps will create a plaque. We will send you the plaque, so you will be able to give this at the meeting at the beginning of the year. And and then we'll also recognize them in Grain and at the exchange. And there's also the lifetime member form. So if you have people who are fully retired, is one thing we have to say, fully retired from the grain business, but they want to keep connected. You know, they've been a part of your group forever, and they've been a member, and they meet all the other qualifications. The chapter can nominate someone to be a lifetime member. There's the form and instructions in there. These are all great ways of recognizing those people who make your chapter your chapter. And then we have some other information on membership development and marketing your chapter. The other thing that's really great about this website is each of your chapters has a local chapter page. And it is this pretty map, and somebody can go and look and say, oh, I live out east. The Mid-Atlantic chapter looks like it's where I want to be. Now, this one they've given us photos for a carousel. So we do have photos, and we put them up. So if your chapter has some photos that you'd like to see in a carousel, it just makes it pop more. The other thing is you can see when Kelly asks you for pictures of your leaders, this is where it goes. We want people to know if they come to the meeting that they'll meet Philip and Lance and Scott and Jacob and who they are and what they look like. Also, when Kelly was talking about the meeting reports, or the meeting schedules, this is why we need it. It lives here, so anyone can see what meetings are coming up. Obviously, the more stuff you have on there, the more interesting it seems, that sort of thing. Now, this is something new in the last year that we just started. If your chapter would like help with registration, if that's something that it's just a kind of a pain for people to deal with, Jeeps International, Kelly and I can set up your meeting so we take the money here by credit card. We don't take checks, but you can pay by credit card, and you can register people. So I want to show you this quick, because I think it's pretty cool. So I'm on here, and I say,
I agree. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so I have to register myself, and I'm a fake person on here. I go in, or you create so if it's someone new and they're not a member and they want to come on, they can just create an account. So if people have an account, they can just create it. If they don't, or they can just go in and log in. If they don't have an account, they can just register. So I want to register myself. Oh, there's other problems here. I have other issues going on because I think I did this yesterday. So I want to register someone else in my company. So I would register Jay and have all his information, and then I want to add a new contact, so I can do that too. I'm not going to do it because it's boring, but Mickey Mouse is coming. So there we go. So now I can register everybody and then proceed to check out. Now, this doesn't usually happen. It's just that I've been doing a lot of things with my records, so that's why it's kind of funky. But proceed to check out and just pay. What would happen then is Kelly or I will send you updates on when you need it, how many people are registered, and then at the end, we'll reconcile, and Kelly will send electronic funds transfer within 2 weeks to your bank account. So you don't even have to see a check. It is a very slick, clean way of doing registrations. If you want to take credit cards and don't want to have to pay the credit card fees, Jeeps International picks up that tab, so 100% of the money goes straight to you. I'm going to pause for a second and just see if anyone has any questions on that. I think it's, I covered a lot, and I want to make sure, okay. Right.
Everybody's feeling good? Let's see.
Okay. So, I'm going to give this back to Kelly, at least the PowerPoint. I'll keep talking. Other things that we do as a chapter leaders work as a resource for you includes the workshop at Glean at the annual conference. So we'll have a chapter leaders workshop and the classic meeting at the Exchange. This is your chance to meet other leaders.
As well as a CRC, Chapter Resource Committee meeting.
Yep. There's also a leadership conference in the Jeeps Leadership Education and Networking conference that we hold in July, and that has shifted to be much more of a leadership training for folks. So this is a great way to get more general leadership training that you can use at, as a chapter leader or in your workplace. There's also other leaders you can reach out to. I think I would always recommend that if you know another leader in the chapter, just to call them up and say, I have this problem, can you give me some ideas? And then you can always reach out to staff. So those are the resources you have. And we have a lot of different resources in different ways that what you need will try and direct you. So if you're just lost, give Kelly or I a call, and we'll kind of help direct you to maybe the resources you need. Okay, now I just want to reiterate the member recognition, the longevity pins, the awards, the lifetime membership. I will give you a little time frame of it. Usually the lifetime membership can happen at any point. We do notice it seems to happen in around membership renewal time or when somebody actually retires. So keep that in mind. The longevity pins, we'll be sending those out in October, at least who is eligible to each of the chapters, and it's up to you and the chapter if you want to give them.
Deb, do you maybe want to explain which ones we send to chapter leaders versus which one Jeeps International gives?
Right. So we do 5, 10, 15, and 20-year pins. Jeeps International will do a 25, 40, and 50-year pin. So, and you'll see in the director source the list of all the people who have gotten those pins. So we do recognize that. And then the awards, the chapter member distinction really is a great way to recognize members in your chapter who've done something that you really are impressed, that really helps make the chapter run better. Okay, so now we're coming to the end. We can't have one of these meetings without having a heads up on what's coming up. So besides all the regular DE training, we're going to have our second hands-on training at Kansas State University. Now, I'm sure all of you know how to work all the equipment in your elevators, but you might have someone newer who might not know. This is a great way for them to actually learn on the machines without destroying the entire elevator. So that is something that, if you know someone who that would be helpful for, please let us know. There's also the Exchange in New Orleans. The IEC met down in New Orleans with the Host Advisory Committee. I think there are great things planned for everybody. The Gulf South chapter and the Host Advisory Committee is very excited to see Jeeps down there, so I think pay attention. That's coming up quickly. The OSHA Alliance Stand Up Grain Safety Alliance is coming up. We'll be sending some stuff on the dates and that sort of thing. But what this is we have partnered with NGFA and OSHA to really try and have a week that focuses on safety in grain elevators. And we might be asking chapters if they want to do something during that week. Let us know. It's a great way to really spend some time to focus on safety because that is such a big issue in elevators. And of course, in July in Minneapolis-St. Paul will be the Jeeps Leadership Education Networking Workshop. They are working really hard to have something that is pertinent to leaders, both volunteer but leadership in the workforce, in the workplace. So, okay, we just went through a ton of information in 52 minutes. And so I want to take a breath and see if there are questions that anyone on the call has. And the chat has. Okay. I think if no one does, or if you think of it the minute you hang up the phone, Kelly and I are here. We love talking to group chapter leaders. One of the, I think it's hard because everything's done by email, and I like talking, if you haven't figured that out. So feel free to call us, we're, just to check in, we're doing this. But I think the one thing I want to make sure you all know is that as a chapter leader, you are really appreciated. You're appreciated by the staff, you're appreciated by the IAC, you're appreciated, maybe don't always feel appreciated by your members, but I'm sure they appreciate you. But the work you do is very valuable. You make you are the knowledge, you are part of the knowledge resource, clear and simple. And we want to make sure that whatever support we can provide, that we're here for you. We got your back. Whatever, we just got your back. So just let us, when you're having issues or concerns, give us a call. It might just be a shoulder to cry on, but we will be willing to listen. So.
Yep, Jeeps would not be in the position it is right now if it weren't for volunteer leaders such as yourself. So we take our chapter services roles, very seriously, and again, just cannot thank you enough for your dedication, your commitment, your support of Jeeps, and everything you do for the organization and for your members.
Thank you for being on this call, and I think with that, we are done in less than, oh, Josh, someone talking? Okay. Thank you for being on the call. With that, give us a call if you need it, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.